What a finale to the 2025-2026 college football season as the Indiana Hoosiers do it. They complete a perfect season. Indiana becomes just the, I believe, second team to be a 16-0 college football team. Only two college football teams have gone 16-0 in the history of college football. The 1894 Yale Bulldogs and the 2019 North Dakota State Bison. This time it is the Indiana Hoosiers who do it for the first time in the turn of the 20th century in college football. Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen. This is the instant reaction to what was a phenomenal back and forth battle between two juggernauts searching for a national title. You could not ask for a better game than what you got tonight. You couldn't ask for anything better. And I got to give all the credit in the world to Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers for doing the impossible, for doing something that many people would think is quite simply almost impossible to do. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have believed that Indiana going into 2024 in 2 seasons would be playing for a national championship and winning a national championship. Would not have crossed my mind that that would have been the case, but it was. Who wanted it more at the end of the day? Who was going to make the big play when it was all said and done? Indiana did that. And they rightfully deserved to win a national title. So a massive win for Indiana. What a way for them to close out the season on top. There is nobody better than for Curt Cignetti and that Indiana Hoosier team to close out as the best team in college football. One of the greatest turnaround stories in college football history is complete. Welcome on in, ladies and gentlemen. This is the instant reaction for the Miami and Indiana national championship game. Always presented by our good friends over at Frost Buddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com. Use the promo code SSS15 to get 15% off of your first purchase. On all tumblers, on all mugs, whatever it is that you want to use that promo code SSS15. Guys, you talk about a team that basically copy and pasted James Madison's entire roster from a couple years ago. A team that had 0 5-stars. 0. And what an incredible turnaround for them. What did we talk about going into this game when we discussed this game on Monday? I said that the X factor of this game would have to be Charlie Becker. it would have to be Indiana's front four being able to get off the field on third down. Guys, Miami didn't have a third down conversion until 3 minutes left in the third quarter. They were 0 for 8 on their first few third down conversions. And they still managed to outgain Indiana in total yards. But that's not Indiana's game. They weren't going to be a throw the football down the field type of team. That's just not them. That's never been them. And they're not that team to do that. You know what they are, though? They're a team that just continues to be balanced. They continue to establish themselves up front, and they find ways to throw the football, or they find ways to capitalize on third down. They made their chances. They took advantage of what was in front of them. They did. I was surprised that Charmar Brown didn't get a lot more carries compared to last week against Ole Miss. I do understand that he had one reception for 11 yards, but after that, he really didn't do a whole lot on the ground. Mark Fletcher, heck of an ending for his college career. 17, not for his college career, but an ending to the season. 17 carries, 12. He for the Hurricanes, Carson Beck. Did he play perfect? No. No. Not even close to being perfect. Do I think he had some missed opportunities down the stretch? Yes, he did. That defense for Indiana, though, came to play. They were able to get some pressure on Carson Beck, force him out the pocket, and have him throw on the run. He's simply not comfortable with doing that. Malachi Tony, 10 carries for 122 yards, most of which came in the second half. Indiana first half wise, the drives weren't all that pretty, but they found ways to move the football down the field, and they really put that Miami defense on its heels. So let's go through the play-by-play as we do all the time. Y'all do me a favor. We got 229 of you in here already. Y'all make sure y'all hit the repost button, hit the like button on Twitter if you are watching us there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, y'all do us a favor there too. Hit the like, hit the share button, and hit the subscribe button so that you can get notified every time we go live on the Southern Sports Scene. All right, let's get started with this one. Miami gets the opening kickoff, and already they established themselves on the ground. First play, outside zone, Mark Fletcher manages to pick up 9. That was what they were going to have to do. And that's what Miami has been all year long. That has been their bread and butter majority of 2025. Was establishing themselves up front. That was their momentum in the college football playoff, which was getting their runs, getting established up front on the line of scrimmage. That was what they wanted to do, and that's what they will do in order for them to win a game. That's what they were going to have to do. They got away from it early on. Carson Beck runs a quick screen out to Malachi Tony that goes for 6. Mark Fletcher has a draw that goes for 2. Carson Beck tries to go back to Malachi Tony. It's broken up by that Indiana secondary had a really, really damn good game. I thought they did a really good job of establishing themselves in the secondary, keeping everything in front of them, and not allowing for Miami to capitalize on the deep play. They did a really good job of that. And I think that was really, really accomplished throughout the entirety of the football game. And guys, that's what wins you football games. When you are able to develop as a whole in the line of scrimmage, or in your secondary, actually. When your secondary comes to play and they make big plays down the stretch, when you're able to get off the field, guys, you're gonna win games like that. You are. You are. So, look, man, got to give that team a lot of credit for what they've been able to do for the majority of the season in the secondary. They've made plays over and over and over. Check down, and Malachi Tony only picks up 3, so now they have to punt the football. Massive first drive for Indiana's defense. Indiana gets the football. Omar Cooper on an out route for 10. He should have been shut down for like 7, but Miami had a lot of issues tackling. We'll get to that later on in the show. Roman Hemby on the stretch play gets shut down after a gain of 2. You have a check down to Roman Hemby that goes for 1. When you are able to, Miami is able to put pressure on Fernando Mendoza. Off of the inside. Guys, by the way, here's a guy that didn't get a lot of noticeability throughout the game. Okay? And that was Ahmad Moten. And I understand that he didn't get a whole lot of playing time at the end of it all because of that knee injury that he had. Guys, that was still very impressive from what he was able to put on display earlier today. I think he showed you why. That's a tough dude. He wanted to be in that football game. And I think he proved to you how much he loves the game of football, that he's playing hurt, but guys, he's out there still balling. Doing things that, to be quite honest with you, not a whole lot of big men would be doing. You have him. Marquise Lightfoot put some pressure as well. Oh, my God. Marquise Lightfoot blew up Roman Hemby, by the way. Miami's second offensive possession. There's an outside zone by Mark Fletcher. Another draw for Mark Fletcher gets blown up for just a yard. And then Lewis Moore, they're in sync zone coverage. So he does a good job of keeping his eyes on the quarterback, reading the route, knowing that he's not going to have to get out of his knowing that he's not going to have to drop back very far, keeps a reasonable distance, maybe a 2 or 3 step slide, gets out of his drop, makes a great break on the football, and gets a PBU. They got to force a 3 and out. Indiana's second offensive possession. Fernando Mendoza gets pressured by Ahmad Moten again, and then Ruben Bain comes off the right side as well. There's a holding call. Back him up 10. RPO game was utilized at every moment for Indiana. RPO to Amari Cooper for 25. They were spying the heck out of them linebackers. I mean, spying the living piss out them linebackers. Kalen Black on the slow-moving, developing draw is able to pick up 6. There's a false start on Indiana again. Kalen Black on a counter for 7. Kalen Black goes on another draw, picks up 3. Fernando Mendoza on, or never mind, Kalen Black picked up 4. Or no, never mind, not 3. Fernando Mendoza on a busted play keeps it just for 2. And on 3rd and 8, a fade route trying to go to Charlie Becker in the end zone is incomplete. Nico Radicic picks up the 34-yard field goal. It's 3-0 Indiana. Third offensive possession for Miami. Carson Beck trying to get the football over a guy like Ro Hardy, who, by the way, did we forget how good Ro Hardy has been for Indiana? Navy transfer. Comes to Indiana and absolutely dominates the playoff run, really the postseason run. That's including Big Ten title game. Guys, I thought he was all over the field tonight. And I think he's showing you how instinctive of a linebacker that he is. And they tried throwing over the top. He's able to get his hand up, tip the football away. Tight end initially has it, and Lewis Moore forces it out. Another great play. Carson Beck tries to go to the sideline to go to, I believe it was Keelan Marion. It was either him or Malachi Tony. D'Angelo Pons is able to get out of his break and get a PBU. Let me just go on a little side rant here. D'Angelo Pons is 5'9", and he's playing and he's an All-American, by the way. He's playing like a first-round defensive back. So everybody that gives a hell about his size and, oh, he's not a first-round DB. Oh, he's not this. Oh, he's not that. Sure as hell did play like that tonight. And look, you can disagree with me. I don't care. I told you that Indiana, for them to win this football game, they needed all 3 phases of the game. Special teams, offense, and defense. We'll get to that later. There's a 3rd down blitz by Aiden Fisher working on Mark Fletcher. Mark Fletcher had usually been good in blitz pickup. He gets beat on an inside move, and Aiden Fisher picks up a sack, and they have to punt the football. Indiana's 3rd offensive drive. Roman Hemby on the outside zone gets blown up by Ruben Bain. Then Amon Moten again is able to blow up the middle and forces just a 1-yard game, and then Indiana ends up throwing a screen to Roman Hemby again for 4. They got to punt the football. So a couple of 3-and-outs right now, and not a whole lot going for either side of the football offensively. But I'm not really surprised. We were going to have moments like these throughout the game. We've seen it when Miami played when they played Texas A&M and Ohio State. And we saw it when Indiana played Ohio State as well. Miami's 4th offensive drive. Draw to Mark Fletcher going for 1. An inside curl for 7. Marty Brown on 3rd and 2 gets blown up at the line of scrimmage. It's a TE stunt. By the way, let me talk about Kamara too. Mikhail Kamara. His stats aren't as good as what they were last year. Guys, he's still making an impact. He's still one of the better edge rushers in the country. Guys, he may have had a rough year this past year. Maybe it's because he might have gotten treated more of like a, like a Jadeveon Clowney. They put a lot more emphasis on a guy like that. But guys, in my opinion, that don't matter. That kid played a hell of a game and proved and showed you why he was an All-American last year. Excited to see him in the draft, by the way. He's going to be really, really dang good. So a TE stunt, by the way, is when a tackle is going to take a hard step up the field and loop around and play more of that defensive end position. He's going to come off the edge. So he's taking a hard step forward and then looping around that tackle. Meanwhile, the end is going to twist around, go to where that D tackle would be. He'd shoot through that B gap, get up underneath that guard and try to force the issue. That's exactly what Indiana was able to do. It's a really good stunt, a really good job by Indiana being able to force that. Fourth offensive possession. Man, this was a beautiful one. This was such a beautiful drive. Play action with Eli Surratt for 12. RPO to Eli Surratt is incomplete. OJ Frederick, guys, I gotta talk about OJ Frederick for a minute. OJ Frederick had a really dang good game. You know, you talk about a guy that had to come in for Xavier Lucas, who had to sit out the first half because of the targeting call last week against Ole Miss, which still disputing that. But I thought he came in and filled in a very volatile role, very pivotal role in that DB room that was needing to get filled. Riley Nowakowski on the quick pass picks up a hard 8, man. He was stopped for about a gain of 5, but he's able to fight for an extra 3. Kalen Black on the draw picks up 1. Counter for Roman Hemby is able to pick up a yard. Delayed handoff is getting 3. There's an incompletion intended for Elijah Surratt. But unfortunately, OJ Frederick, once again on the back shoulder fade, incompletion. Pass interference. Ahmad Hardy is able to, or not Ahmad Hardy, Ahmad Moten is able to scrape across against a guy like Pat Coogan. I thought Pat Coogan struggled a bit. I thought that the chess match between him and that Miami defensive line kind of got to him. And, you know, that kind of stung a little bit. I thought that Pat Coogan would be able to be much better against that front four of Miami. But look, that's a really good defensive line. And when you compare them to teams like, I don't know, an Alabama or an Oregon, they're just simply just as much better, almost twice as good when you compare them to the other defensive lines that Indiana has played this year. Kalen Black on a, well, where am I at? Draw for 2 to Hemby. Seam route is incomplete, but there's an offsides penalty on Ruben Bain again. Guys, second, third down penalty on Miami's defense. They would have been off the field a long time ago. You had the pass interference that led to a first down, and then this one really came back to bite Indiana, or came back to bite Miami. It was 3rd and 13 is an offsides penalty. 3rd and 8. Kalen Black on a delayed draw gets 20 because the middle's wide freaking open. And he's got nothing but green grass in front of him. He takes advantage of that, gets 20. Quick throw to Omar Cooper, gets 3. Out route to Charlie Becker, who's able to fight down the pylon and get 15. Initially thought he had a touchdown. That ended up being overturned. He stepped out at the 5-yard line. Kalen Black met at the line of scrimmage and picks up 1 on the draw. Another run by Kalen Black for 3. And then finally, Riley Nowakowski on a fullback dive gets into the end zone. His second carry of the season, and he's able to punch it in for a touchdown. Massive win. You know, really, really impressive display by that Indiana offense. That's a hard freaking way to pick up a first down, to pick up big yardage like that, to pick up a touchdown off of that. Massive drive before the half. Miami, how do they respond? Can they finally get things going? Guys, Miami at this point has had 3 straight 3-and-outs. They haven't had a first down since their first drive of the game. They have 1. Actually, I think that was their third 3-and-out of the game. They hadn't had a first down since the second play of their first drive, when they had the screen to Malachi Tony. 5th drive of the game. Mark Fletcher off counter right gets 5. Another draw to Mark Fletcher gets 4. Mark Fletcher, Mikhail Kamara, and Tucker on the draw shuts them down at the line of scrimmage. Mark Fletcher off tackle barely gets Miami's first down since the opening drive. CJ Daniels on the levels concept is able to run a post and get 25. Tunnel screen to Malachi Tony is able to pick up 2. There's a timeout by Indiana, and they're able to finally adjust. Mark Fletcher on the zone away gets stopped at the line of scrimmage. Keelan Murray on the jet motion jail screen is able to get 6. Now you got to settle for 3. Carter Davis, Carter Davis had been struggling all college football playoff. I got to be real with you. And I think you and I aren't stupid to believe that he didn't have a bad game. 50, looked good initially, and then just bounces off the upright. Indiana has a draw to Robin Hemby, an out route to Charlie Becker, and an incompletion on the Hail Mary. So now Indiana goes into the half. They're up 10-0. And they have all the momentum in the world. They're getting the football to start the second half. They're shutting down what Miami wants to do. This is their opportunity right here. Kalen Black coming out of the half. Before we do that, I'm going to take a break. We will be right back in just a few minutes. Second half, Kalen Black gets shut down at the line of scrimmage. 2nd and 10. This is one I thought the momentum started to shift to the side of Miami. Fernando Mendoza staying in the pocket for too long. He's sacked by Akeem Mesidor. Loses 7. 3rd and 17. Kalen Black runs for 5, but then, oh crap, here we go again. There's a face mask on Miami. First down for Indiana at their own 38. Roman Hemby up the middle for 1. Fernando Mendoza throws to Eli Surratt. That's incomplete. Looked like there could have been a PI there. Was not called. And Ruben Bang comes and joins the sack party with his first sack of the night. Loses 8. Malachi Tony puts Miami right at the 38-yard line. And this is what it looked like. Throws short to Tony for 5. Mark Fletcher off the counter, able to follow the right side of that offensive line with Tommy Brockermeyer, who's played absolutely incredible. Or not Tommy Brockermeyer, James Brockermeyer, who I thought played arguably his best. He had his best performance of the year. Thought James Brockermeyer looked extremely, extremely good. And I think he's going to be one of the first centers taken off the board as an All-American. Francis Mauigoa with a nice block outside. 57-yard touchdown. Gone. Now the momentum starts to shift. Roman Hemby gets 15. Roman Hemby for 5. Roman Hemby for 2. Tries to go to Elijah Surratt on the fade route. Well, oh, wait, never mind. They try to go to the comeback route to Elijah Surratt. Elijah Surratt has it in his hands. All he's got to do is secure the football, and he drops it. Muhammad Toure gets credit for the break for the PBU, but that credit is going to go to Elijah Surratt because he really got his own PBU. He's the one that pretty much forced his own incompletion. He's the one that dropped the football. So now the momentum is going to the side of Miami. Oh, crap. Mark Fletcher runs for 1. Trying to go to Malachi Tony is incomplete. Carson Beck to CJ Daniels. They have the matchup that they want, but Josh Sharp is able to come across the middle and gets the PBU, which is arguably one of the better plays of that entire playoff. I'm not even going to lie to you. Indiana has to punt because Fernando Mendoza gets sacked. Akeem Mesidor with another big sack. Kalen Black tries to get a majority of it back after he gets 6. Fernando Mendoza once again tries to go to Eli Surratt, and it's incomplete. Miami again struggling. Run up the middle for 3. Incomplete to Keelan Marion. Carson Beck tries to go to Malachi Tony, gets 6. Lewis Moore is able to get the 3rd down stop. Dylan Joyce is blocked by Mikhail Kamara, and Isaiah Jones falls on top of it. The defensive MVP of the game gets the biggest play and the biggest turning point of the football game and puts the momentum back in Indiana's hands. And from then on, we had a freaking back and forth fourth quarter. Miami, 10 plays, 81-yard drive. And it was a balanced offense that we saw from Indiana. This was the first time Miami would also finish with their first down since the first quarter. Or actually, this is their first third down conversion all game. Carson Beck to Mark Fletcher for 8. Mark Fletcher gets 10. Incomplete to Alex Bowman. D'Angelo Pons is able to put that shoulder in there and force the football out. Jamar Brown for 4. CJ Daniels on, they ran that levels concept a good bit. He gets 24 and gets a first down. Moore for 1. Malachi Tony for 22 on the short screen. Mark Fletcher for 3. Mark Fletcher for 6. Mark Fletcher rushes it in the middle. Touchdown. Mark Fletcher kept Miami in that football game. Dude had a really, really good game. And it was impressive, to say the least. It really was. Kalen Black runs for 2. Kalen Black for 13. Fernando Mendoza to Omar Cooper is broken up by Ethan O'Connor. Omar Cooper again for 18. Fernando Mendoza tries to get something going with a 1-yard gain. Gets shut down by a broken play, too. Roman Hemby rushes for 4. 3rd and 5. Tries to go to Omar Cooper deep. It's incomplete. 4th and 5. Arguably the biggest. You're about to see 2 of the biggest plays on this drive. And it shows you why a guy like Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman Trophy. 4th and 5. Back shoulder fade to Charlie Becker, who comes up with a crazy freaking catch for 19 yards. First down. Kalen Black runs for 4. Kalen Black runs for 2. Incompletion to try to go to E.J. Williams in the middle of the field. Another big play. 4th and 4. If you go back and read my tweets, I said that Miami or Indiana needed to spread this Miami defense out and get them on their heels to get them off balance. They did just that. Fernando Mendoza, up the middle, design quarterback draw. Initially, I thought he was going to be stopped at about a yard short. Jump cut, gets the first down, bounces off a tackle, dives into the end zone. 12-yard touchdown. What a run. 2 plays on that drive told you all that you needed to know about Fernando Mendoza and his legacy as a Heisman Trophy winner. He is not the statistically best, but when the game is on the line, he comes up clutch and he finds a way to deliver. It's exactly what you saw today. That's exactly what was put on display. Here comes Miami, though. Not done yet. Malachi Tony for 8. Mark Fletcher up the middle for 3. Carson Beck trying to go to Keelan Marion. Back-to-back plays. And it's 3rd and 15 after a false start penalty as well. Alex Bowman with a massive catch for 22, and it's a first down. Carson Beck to Malachi Tony on the quick screen, up the middle, goes for 41 and a first down. Carson Beck to Malachi Tony, another short play, touchdown. Just like that. Went 91 yards down the field and scores. Indiana is able to counter. They take off 4:55 off the field, off the clock. They can't get a first down. By the way, that false start by Carter Smith could have hurt them. So Indiana has to kick a field goal. It's 27-21. There's a delay of game. On the very first play, Carson Beck tries to go to Alex Bowman. It's incomplete. It's about to be 3rd and 15, but there's a roughing the passer on Landino that puts Miami in great field position. Now they're at their own 35. Charmar Brown for 11. Throws short to Malachi Toney for 7. CJ Daniels for 6. Carson Beck thinks he has one-on-one coverage on the outside. Jamari Sharp reads it, jumps the route, and secures Indiana with a big INT and their first national championship in school history. What a game. What a game. What a game. Carter Smith, though, man, that the All-American he would have been the butt of the joke, man, if Miami went down the field and scored. Doesn't matter, though. A team with 0 5-stars. 0 5-stars is able to go down the field against a Miami team that looks so much better compared to what they were in the past. That 2 years ago, Indiana couldn't fill their own stadium. They were one of the worst teams in college football. They have been one of the worst teams in college football. And in 2 years, Curt Cignetti has finished a turnaround season. The greatest turnaround in college football history. The greatest turnaround probably in all of sports. Because when you're in a college town where, guys, you got to understand, Indiana has always been a basketball school. Let me just tell you, you got to know the history of Indiana. And you've got to understand what this team has gone through. Guys, their bowl record is 6-11. They won 3 games. They won 3 playoff games in this season alone. From September of 2012 until this year of November, they had the most all-time losses in school history. In the history of college football, nobody has lost more games than Indiana. Nobody. They are, from a statistical standpoint, the 10th worst team in college football history. They've been around for 138 years. 138 years. And by the way, there's only one other Power 4 team that's worse than them statistically in winning percentage. That's Wake Forest. Indiana, of all teams, out of the major P4 conferences, is the worst team in college football history. Only 6 of the 20. Let me tell you the history of them. Since 1895, only 6 of the 25 head coaches have left Indiana with a winning record. The last one was Bo McMillin in 1947. They have the 5th all-time worst winning percentage among FBS schools with with over 1,000 games played. And like I mentioned, they're the second worst Power 4 team in college football history. They were the worst team in college football history. For some reason, they have 4 head coaches that have won AFCA Coach of the Year awards, probably because they have teams that they don't expect. They have coaches that they don't expect to win games like that. Nobody goes to Indiana to have this type of success. Nobody. You know what's even crazier? Let's go back to 2022. Georgia's about to cap off, and I just saw this from our good friend Chris Gordy. They're about to kick off, or they're about to cap off winning back-to-back national title games. The SEC has won 13 of the next 17 years. It's 13 of the 17 national titles. And someone comes and whispers in your ear and said, the Big Ten is about to win 3 straight natties. Michigan, Ohio State, and Indiana. Of all. Would anybody would expect that? No, they wouldn't. They would not. They would not. Nobody in their right mind would have believed that. Not a single person in the history of college football would have expected for Indiana, of all teams, to be a national champion. Nobody. I wonder how recruiting will be for Indiana. Following this last 2 years. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you guys. They're 6-11 in bowl games. By the way, before this year, they've won 3 bowl games in their history. They won 3 playoff games this year. They've had the exact same amount of playoff wins as they do bowl wins. Hats off to Indiana. That team knows how to win, and they will always know how to win. Let's talk about our way too early top 25 real fast before we get out of here. I got Indiana coming in at number 25. I'm really excited to see what Missouri brings to the table from an offensive standpoint. I know that they're going to lose a lot, but I know Eli Drinkwitz. I know that this is a rebound type of team. I do. I really do. And I think as a whole, depending on what happens from guys, like Matt or not Matt Zollers. But depending on what you see from guys like Marquise Johnson, if he ends up deciding to stay with South Carolina, or not South Carolina, what am I doing here? Marquise Johnson is officially with Mississippi State, which, by the way, this is a massive pickup for Mississippi State. We'll mention this one when we talk about the transfer portal. I think Missouri can load up in the receiving core. I think Austin Simmons is going to be a very interesting dynamic to your offense, and I think you have a lot of interesting things planned out for you as a whole. Garrett Riley, I believe, can make an interesting splash for Missouri right now. Offensive assistant right now, so he's not officially an offensive coordinator. I would, however, like for him to work with your quarterback. I think he can do that with a guy like Austin Simmons. I also really like what Chip Lindsey can do. Chip Lindsey is a veteran offensive coordinator around college football. Lindsey was the former OC with Michigan. You have a quarterback coach with him too. So that's what Garrett Riley, I would like for him to be used as. I want him as a quarterback coach, exclusively a quarterback coach with Missouri. What is he going to do with him? What is the wide receiver room going to look like for Missouri going into next year? Donovan Ogblue, top 15 receiver in the nation, top 10 player last year in the class of 2025. I think he has an opportunity to break out this year. From the transfer portal perspective of Missouri, I think you've seen some guys that I think can make an interesting impact. I know that interior offensive line is going to be the big issue because you're going to lose a lot. And I thought you did good. Will Kemna from Kansas State comes to Missouri. Zach Owens goes to Missouri as well. Luke Work from Mississippi State. A couple of Mississippi State guys transferring to Missouri, which I think is really good for you. Caleb Goody, second leading receiver for Cincinnati this past year. Seen some good stuff about him. He's a Breaux Bridge, Louisiana native. So he's been around the South a little bit. And, I really, really like, his skill set and his intangibles as a receiver. I think he can be that safety valve that Missouri needs to get their offense up and going. You also have a guy like Nick Evers who could be a reliable backup for you. Nashawn Montgomery, the former Florida wide receiver, just committed to to Missouri. He's going to be in his second year. He's got a lot of potential. Horatio Fields, though, was probably your biggest get at receiver. That's a guy that I really like. Him, and let me just tell you, I think the number one thing that you have to get from a perspective is the run game. I lose it. Ahmad Hardy sucks. Guys, Zyshawn Edwards is going to have the football fed to him a lot. 24, I have Arizona. 23, Houston. 22, Virginia Tech. Penn State at 21. 20, Iowa. I have Iowa as a sleeper next year for the college football playoff. Tennessee, I have at 19. 18, USC. Alabama, 17. 16 at Washington. Depending on what happens with the Damon Williams situation, guys, that situation could get weird. What if Damon Williams ends up wanting to sit out? What if that happens? Utah coming in at 15. Look, Utah's still really good. Make no mistake about that. Morgan Scalley comes in. He's been a long time assistant with Kyle Whittingham. He's been a Utah guy his entire career. Okay, didn't get to play in the NFL. He's a former DB with Utah. Started off as an administration assistant like 2 years after he played college football. Ended up being a GA for a year. Then he's been the defensive coordinator for the last 10 years. He hires a guy like Kevin McGivern as his offensive coordinator. We'll see what he can do as a whole. This is a very favorable schedule for Utah to be able to make a run. They play BYU. They play Houston. They're going to play Arizona on the road. It's Cincinnati too on the road. Iowa State on the road. TCU, we'll see what happens with them. But I think it's overall a very favorable schedule for Utah to potentially be the Big 12's best, obviously contending with Texas Tech, depending on what they bring back in regards to the portal. But I would expect Texas Tech to reload too. LSU at 14. Let's see what happens in Lane Kiffin's first year. I have Ole Miss above them because they've been able to retain depth for the most part. Depending on what happens with the Trinidad Chambliss situation, I'm really not worried about that because you have another reliable guy in Deuce Knight. And I think Deuce Knight has an opportunity to do what many people thought wasn't really possible. You know how Austin Simmons was waiting in the wings for a while. This is Deuce Knight's team. And I think he fits well in this John David Baker or offense that Ole Miss loves so much. BYU, I have at 12. Really interested to see what Bear Bachmeier's second season is going to look like. A lot of depth returning at the offensive line. And I know you'll lose a receiver or two there, but I think he'll be really good. Michigan at 11. I expect for Bryce Underwood to be much better this time next season compared to what you did this past year. Obviously, you had your issues with offensive coordinator wise. Look, I like Chip Lindsey, but it doesn't help that you don't have an offensive-minded coach in your backfield. So you've got to be able to get some dudes in the portal. Losing a guy like Justice Haynes sucks, but I think Michigan will be much better in year 2 of the Bryce Underwood era. Texas A&M at 10. They bring back Marcel Reed. No surprise there. You've reloaded already in the transfer portal. You know, you're able to get some dudes, a lot of dudes, man. I mean, a ton of guys that you were able to bring in into this team. You know, you're able to get guys like CJ Mims, who's a very, very solid interior defensive lineman, I think can make an immediate impact there. You get Isaiah Horton from Alabama. The fact that you were able to flip him is quite impressive, to say the least. Ricky Gibson's a guy that I really am excited to see bring to the table. From a defensive perspective, I think he can be one of your better corners, something that you struggled with a lot this past year, and something that you're going to have to get better at this time next year. You bring in Welcome Formby, the Alabama offensive lineman. I think there's a lot of potential in his future. CJ Mims, who we've already talked about. You know, Anto Osaka. I'm curious to see what Anto Osaka can bring. Here's a guy that had 3 sacks this past year, and I know that he didn't really get a lot of playing time, but here's a guy that, you know, when he's on the field, I think can really deliver. You know, he had a strong freshman year with 5.5 sacks. Hasn't been able to see the field as much. I know he struggled at times in that department, but I think Texas A&M from the transfer portal is going to be really good. 6, I have Oregon. Dante Moore staying in Oregon is a very good decision. You have a healthy receiving core, and I think Oregon can make some noise again. Notre Dame coming in at 5. Young team from last year. Obviously, losing Jeremiah Love sucks, but I think you're able to rebound from that. Give some pieces for C.J. Carr to throw the football to. Indiana, I have at number 4. Josh Hoover throwing the football. I know that you're going to lose guys like Eli Surratt and Omar Cooper. And then obviously EJ Williams, who's finally going to be done with college football, man. EJ Williams has been in college football forever. I'm pretty sure Omar Cooper is done after this year. I would expect him to enter the draft. Elijah Surratt is going to do the same thing. But depending on what happens, if you're able to convince Omar Cooper to stay in Bloomington, if you're able to give him a contract that's enough instead of him going to the NFL draft, you bring back a guy like Charlie Becker, who should be your number one receiver. Mr. Clutch, man. Charlie Clutch was incredible down the stretch. He's going to make big catches, and he's going to prove to you why he's going to be one of the better receivers in the Big Ten next year. Georgia, I have at 3. Again, you got much better in the receiving core this past year. But what was the one thing that hindered you? You need to go get a true edge rusher. You need to go get dudes in the middle. You need to get a defensive line. I think you're going to be able to do that this upcoming season. You got to hit the portal and really, even though you still got guys in the portal that are still waiting to get picked up, you're going to have to go get dudes. You're going to have to find guys to develop around. You've got to find your guy when it's all said and done. I thought you did well in the portal. You got Dante Dowdle, who was a hard runner last year for Kentucky. Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, who was one of the better weapons that was used down the stretch of the season, started to get some playing time. But you got to go get an edge rusher. Amaris Williams, we'll see what he has to offer. I've seen some really good things from him. I think he can show out in big games. He's got to see the field, man. He's got to see the field. You've got to go get edge rushers. Elo Madzi, you're letting him walk. He's at Purdue right now. But other than that, that's the only real true edge rusher that you're losing. But you've got to be able to go get guys down the stretch. You have got to go find dudes. You have got to be able to develop at a high level. You have got to find an edge rusher that you can build your defense around. Number 2, I got Texas. And look, Texas is cooking in the portal. And you don't need me to tell you that. When you talk about getting guys like Cam Coleman, when you talk about getting dudes like Hollywood Smothers, when you were able to flip him, your running back room is going to be much better. Your wide receiver room just gotten a lot better. You talk about getting one of the better linebackers in the ACC in Rasheem Biles. You get another decent running back in Raleek Brown, who's going to be a depth piece, who's going to be a guy that's going to get out of the backfield, was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. I know he's 5'9", 195. Guys, he's still going to be playing at a high level. When you go get quality depth in the portal, when you get offensive linemen that you can build around, guys, that is a recipe for success right there. And then number 1, no surprise for me, is Ohio State. Look, Ohio State's going to be back. I thought Julian Saban's first year, phenomenal. Here's the problem, though. Here's what hindered them last year is down the stretch, you would have a really bad offensive line play. You have really, really bad offensive line play. But I thought also, I think you just weren't physical up front at times, man. You struggled in that department. That's why you go out and you get guys like Qua Russaw and James Smith from Alabama. That's why you go get Earl Little, who was a top safety at Florida State, to try and replace a guy like Caleb Downs. Hunter Welching, who's going to be a really good tight end coming out of high school. Terry Moore, who is a great high school little safety. He's now an Ohio State Buckeye. But you got to continue to develop, man. You've got to be able to find offensive linemen in this portal. You got to be able to develop them. You're that's what you struggled with worse compared to last year. Bo Jackson returns. He's going to be your starter this upcoming season. Return with the receiver room. Brandon Ennis and Jeremiah Smith obviously are back. You brought in Kyle Parker from LSU. You brought Chris Henry in, who's going to make an immediate impact. The tight end room is going to take a big hit, though. Max Clark is gone, but we'll see what happens with Bennett Christian and Nate Roberts, who comes in at tight end. A lot of starters. All four of your 5 offensive linemen are going to be back next year with Austin Seiferfeld, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, Philip Daniels. All will be playing in the game. But you'll have a couple of rotational guys like Gabe Van Sickle and Josh Padilla, who I think will take that starting role this upcoming season. So what are you going to do with the back 7? That's going to be the biggest cause for concern for a team like Ohio State in 2026. But again, this is a defense that prides itself on developing at a high level. I think Matt Patricia did a really good job really putting that Ohio State off defense to be even better than they were a year ago. And you saw the type of impact that he made. They were much more physical in the line of scrimmage. What is Ohio State going to look like this next year when they go play in 2026? The offense, nothing really much is going to change. I am not concerned with what Ohio State has. They're playing Texas on the road. That's the only thing I will be concerned about. Michigan, obviously, they get Oregon at home. They play Indiana on the road in Memorial, which should be a top 5 matchup. You get Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. You get USC. Guys, this is a much tougher schedule for Ohio State. And they have a top 5 portal class. It's one of the more talented rosters in college football, but it's a tough schedule. Make no mistake about that. But at the end of the day, this is Ohio State we're talking about. Ryan Day, year after year, is able to reload on his roster, and he's able to put together great teams. He's done it before. He's going to do it again in 2027. My initial national champion for the 2027 season, and I'm going to get some feedback. I'm going to get some interesting feedback for this. I'm going to go with Texas, man. I think you were able to get offensive line help. You need O-line help. You were able to get that. And can you be able to give Arch Manning time to deliver to guys like Cam Coleman or Hollywood Smothers? That running back room is deep. They're going to be really good. Give me Texas as your preseason national champion. Obviously, that thing is subject to change, but that's for what I've seen right now. We'll see what happens. When we get to the spring, I'll give you my updated top 25 when we target following April when spring season officially ends. But y'all have a great rest of the night. It's been a heck of a college football season. Thank you for sticking with us the entire way. NFL draft is coming up, guys. Just because the college football season ends, that does not mean the content doesn't stop. We're still going to bring you a lot of season in reviews, a lot of different things that we're going to be giving you over the next several weeks. A lot of content to be talked about. East West Shrine Bowl. Got some practice film that we're going to go over in the next week. Going to be live from Mobile for the Senior Bowl this time next week. So we'll have a lot of shows breaking down each from Mobile, Alabama. Got some draft diamonds that we got to talk about. Got some transfer portal news that's obviously going to be rocking and rolling the next couple of weeks. But y'all make sure you stay tuned to the best content available on the internet for all things college football, all things college, NFL draft. We talk about college football and NFL draft here on the Southern Sports Scene. But y'all have a great rest of the night. Thank you for a great season. Y'all have a good one.